and Stephen for help in coming up with interesting and current programs. And in keeping with the theme, recent downtown Peekskill of women in art, Steve Worthy comes up with a program which we hope will bring artists to the Peekskill Museum. He is a true Renaissance man, and I've known Steve for a while. I mentioned the Crest family to my friend from Ossining who knew about their estate there on Cedar Lane and Spring Valley Road, which I think is part of your talk. So there's also a little bit about Peekskill Military Academy that kind of fits in here, this connection. And of course, Peekskill being the Paris of Westchester. We all want to hear about that, Steve.
Yeah.
So without further ado, here's Steve Worthy.
Hello there, everyone. Nice to see you. Welcome. And I'm glad that you all came. I see some faces that I know and some that are new. Glad to see everybody. And if I speak a little too loud, let me know, because I'm usually a singer and I kind of sometimes don't hear what it sounds like out there. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to do with this talk, I felt that this particular exhibit for the next 3 months, Peekskill, the Power of Artists, to me was very inspiring. There have been some thoughts on my mind for some time about focusing on not only women artists, but images of women and women art collectors with this talk. And just to give you a quick background, you might say, what the heck is a guy doing? A presentation on images of women and women art collectors. And so believe me, I know I'm traveling on the edge of a knife here a little bit, so I'm aware of that. But I'll tell you a quick story where part of this journey started. I worked for IBM and as a temporary for 3 months, and then came time for my permanent employment. And I was going to meet my boss, and I got a phone call and they said, you're going to meet Jerry, go to this address, 1133 Westchester Avenue, White Plains, and you'll start. So I come in, sitting in the waiting room, I'm very nervous, and I see this very tall, statuesque black woman come up and she goes, hello Steve, I'm Jerry, you're welcome. And I was like, okay, nice to meet you, Jerry. And then she says, let me show you where you're going to work. And she takes me to this office, very large enclosed office, with a kind of a half desk. And there's 9 women there. And they're like, hi Steve. And I'm like, okay. Now I applied to IBM. There was a program they were giving when they wanted women to do jobs traditionally done by men, and they wanted men to do jobs traditionally done by women. So I was kind of coming in as a clerk. I tried as a secretary, but my typing wasn't good. And in that time, when I was in that office, I learned so much from these women. They took me under their wing. I, wisely as I was told by a friend of mine, decided to not play, oh, I got to stand up for the males society. I was like, no. And we got along very well. And one of the things that happened was, as I got comfortable and the manager had to change her tone, it was, now girls, now, and Steve, now ladies, and Steve, I realized that, okay, this is what it must be like to be a woman, to come into a professional situation of some kind and be the only woman. Now, as you can see, I'm already African American. Now, I had experiences where my mom was very, very vigilant about making sure that I got good classes and good grades. So there were times when I was the only African American in a class. So I was comfortable with that aspect, but this was something new. So needless to say, I gained certain sensitivities. I found out, you know, all you guys going, hey baby, hey, women don't like that. Now guys, oh sure they like that, I'm giving them a compliment. they don't like that, okay? And that's why you don't see women doing that to guys. It's not because they can't, they sure can, but they don't. So that's a way of leading into some of the images. Now, I have a couple of parts of songs I will play throughout this presentation. Just a couple of tunes that I think might be kind of apropos of the themes we're expressing. And I will try to stop maybe every 10 minutes or so. Does anybody have a quick question or something that they want to share or whatever? We'll try to make it a little bit of a discussion, not a straight lecture. And so I'd like to start off, and also you will probably see me move around a little bit. Don't worry about that on the video, because that's kind of what I'm used to doing. And some of these images, I think, will bear some commentary. So what I'd like to start off with, let me just have a show of hands. How many of you folks are knowledgeable or know about, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Maria Gimbutas? How many of you have heard of her? Okay, this is good, this is good. Because she really pioneered, these are 3 of her books talking about the goddess. What is the goddess? You hear that term, it means different things to different people. They have religious connotations of sorts. So Maria was born 1921 and died in 1994. She lived a long life. She was a Lithuanian-American archaeologist and scholar who identified goddess-based cultures from 20,000 BC to 4,000 BC in Eastern Europe and Asia Minor. And most historians and people you talk to will talk about history, and then they'll talk about prehistory, before writing, before documents, before the alphabet. And that seems to be the height of the goddess culture. Now this is a goddess figurine approximately 10,000 BC, so that's 12,000 years ago, folks. What Maria came out with was a statement in conclusion that certain people were very much at odds with, didn't like it. The world was at peace when God was a woman. So I suggest you go on YouTube, see maybe some of her videos, and I think you'll get a little more of a flavor for how comprehensive her research was. This is not just somebody who just kind of came off with an idea. She was out there as an archaeologist, digging in the fields, finding statues, finding palaces, looking at religious ceremonies that were reconstructed. And she came to that conclusion. Now this I thought was kind of cute. Male and female. Now male and female were both there, but I'm saying, why is the guy? This is like, I think you got to see who's in charge here. Now some people might say that this is very contemporary. Some might not, but some definitely would. And I work at a hotel part-time, and believe me, sometimes when the car pulls up, wait to see who speaks first. Okay, now this was one of the images. A lot of these images were dug up, and they're in museums, particularly in Greece and Cyprus and various places. This was a part of some islands called the Cycladic Islands. And this particular goddess statue was found in Asia Minor, identified as part of the Hittite culture. Now you can see features where, of course, these artists are trying to definitely accentuate the feminine principles. So we'll see breasts, we'll see huge hips. We will also see, though, the nurturing aspect of it as well. I just want to show you a couple of, this was a Canaanite, meaning the Holy Land. These were the folks that were cleared out before the Jews entered the Holy Land. They had to battle to get that particular territory, which they called the Holy Land. And this was dug up in Mesopotamia, in the area where Iran and Iraq is. This is sometimes identified as Inanna, who is one of the female deities who, as you notice, the features are starting getting a little more pronounced, not as rough. She's wearing a crown. She has wings. We notice there's some things on her hand where it's like power. We have owls, symbols of wisdom on both sides of her. So she is not an ordinary workaday woman. This is a supernatural, a celestial being here who is exerting power. Now this I kind of threw in there, found this on the internet, and kind of, you know, it was like a real fast forward time. So I threw this in to just give you a little perspective. You look at where the goddess, and now that's a man there, kind of, you know, Stone Age or prehistory area, we're all struggling to survive, and that's a stone goddess, mind you, stone. So we don't know the condition of the women would have been at that particular point. But then I looked over here and I said, oh, you're trying to make a statement about fashion, about how models and how the images of women have changed. Whereas the breasts and the hips would symbolize in the past, this was prosperity. There was lots of food. The breasts were ample because children were being born. The crops were successful. We, in this particular goddess culture, seem to have plenty. And then you ask yourself, well, what happened? And a few things might have happened. Now we're going to shoot over to Egypt. And we're going to look at a god. This is sort of a creation myth. This is on papyrus, but it's in many of the mortuary tombs throughout Egypt. They would paint these on the walls for not only a symbol of the afterlife, but they would have symbols of creation, the beginning and the end. So the Egyptians were not totally absorbed in mummies and dealing with death. Sometimes it was actually the resurrection principle is what they were really focusing on. That, yes, you're born, life ends, and then life begins anew. So we have a god, Nut, who is the biggest deity, and she represents the sky. That's her body covered in stars. And there was a god named Shu, who is the air god, who was separating Nut from Geb, the earth. So we have another interesting principle in Egyptians, that the earth is a male deity. I grew up always hearing about Mother Nature, Mother Earth. We got to protect Mother Earth, the Gaia principle, which is a sort of looking at the earth as the body of a woman, giving forth life, giving forth vegetation, giving forth, and of course with certain natural phenomena like hurricanes and volcanic eruptions, taking life as well. So this I found, you know, when I first discovered this in college, this was in an Egyptian book in the basement of the library. They wanted us to believe civilization began in 500 BC in Greece. So needless to say, I had a rude awakening in my college education when I discovered this in my junior year. And I went back to some teachers and said, why aren't you teaching anything about Egypt? You know, and got some people upset at me for asking that question. All right, this is another one that sort of is eliminating all the extraneous and getting to a little more of the meat of what I was saying earlier. So there are many symbols. And then we have the children of Nut and Geb, who represent some of the main deities. We have Osiris on the left. That's not Horus, who's the son of Osiris, and Isis second on the left. And Seth is in the middle. He is a god of... He has a reputation of the desert and evil, but is actually a god of limitations. He has these clipped ears, if you notice in the middle figure. It looks like the ears of a donkey, but they're cut off. They're always sliced. And I wondered about that for a long time. In some of my reading, I found that, oh, okay, when you have a computer and you're going to set it up for different parameters to do certain functions, what do? You set the parameters. That's exactly what you do. You set them. You say, I want you to do this and not that. So he became the god of borders between the desert and the oasis, would be a big one. And of course, Isis in the middle. Now that little symbol for Isis, it's a throne on top of her head. That is actually a throne. And Nephthys, who is also one of the deities, that's the home or a house. And you notice there's a doorway on top of her head. It's a little symbol of a closed structure, but there is a door. So she has been identified as the goddess of the home. And then I'm showing this, which is Nephthys again, the house. And yes, she also has a name, Lady of the Temple, and mortuary. These are when buildings started to come into importance as nomadic life started to come to an end. People got tired or just found that those lifestyles were not as successful because you kept moving around and maybe there was food where you went. Oh man, we just left a place that had great game and great vegetation, and now we're in this barren land. What are we going to do? Well, let's go back or go forward. But So that was the earlier culture. And then we have Isis on her head, again representing the throne. Lady of many names was the goddess, and we're going to see more from her later. She